Good morning, Gamecock fans. Today is Friday, July 18th, the year of our Lord 2025, and you are listening to Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Thanks for joining me this morning. Lots of recruiting activity going on around Gamecock land. We're going to get to that. Just wanted to tell everybody shout out for getting back in the swing of things for the show and the morning show later today. We got that on the schedule again. Jamie's coming along at 10. And then from noon to 2, it'll be myself, the Mad Dog, Phil Mullinex, and the late night Gamecock, Matt Anderson, joining us. So we kind of have a block of the late night Gamecock show Wednesday, Thursday, Friday with those two guys. They do a great job. Had Alex on yesterday with the smorgasbord. Lots of great football talk about personnel. Also, we went further on the Kamari Blair commitment, which happened yesterday. Big offensive tackle prospect from Clarksville, Tennessee, deciding on the Gamecocks. Went right down to the wire. There is a decision this evening, 7 o'clock. Landon Duckworth. You can stream Sports Talk with Phil Kornblut from 6 to 8. I'm sure he'll have live updates from that and keep you informed on that. That's on the Chief Sports app, by the way. You can download on Google Play or Apple. Also, I wanted to say that I don't know where Landon's streaming it, but I'm sure it's streamed considering it's a Friday night announcement. Gamecocks are Auburn for that one. I feel confident the Gamecocks will get him back in the fold. Remember, he was committed as a sophomore when Dowell Loggins was here. And I'll just go ahead. I have a habit of reminding people when I'm right about things, and so I'm going to remind you when I'm wrong. And I was wrong about that. I normally, when a guy commits that early and then he opens it back up, he's gone. It's probably just lip service that he's paying to the school he decommitted from. That's why I'm not a fan of early commits. I would like to go back though. That'd be a good content piece. Who committed early to the Gamecocks and then ended up somewhere else? It happens at a lot of schools too. You have guys committed early and then they open it back up and they find that first love was not eternal, if you will. But I thought for sure, Lane Kiffin was in on it. Gus Malzahn at Florida State. He's a good fit for what they do, big time fit for what they do. But Mike Shula taking over, got involved. The Gamecocks kept getting, pressing. You had Jared Curtis kind of in the mix. He eliminated Carolina and ended up picking between Georgia and Oregon. And then Brady Smigel from California, actually ended up going to Michigan. Washington was the big team for him, but liked the Gamecocks a lot. And I think with him, if South Carolina had pushed, they would have gotten him. Michigan's a really good fit for his skill set. Don't get me wrong. I think that's, you go, if let's say Underwood doesn't work out or Underwood's 3 and done, he's that type of quarterback that fits into their offensive scheme at the University of Michigan. So I'm happy, kind of got to know some people around him during the whole thing. I think Michigan's absolutely where he should have gone. If he didn't want to go to Washington, I don't think the family was too fired up about Seattle, truth be told. But the Gamecocks didn't, he visited, had a good visit. Gamecocks just kind of, I don't want to say slow played him, but the reason for that was they were the whole time getting good feedback on Landon Duckworth. And so me adhering to my recruiting doctrine, and that's the best way to do it. If you've got doctrine that applies 75% of the time, that's good. You kind of need to break that down. But I was wrong. I did not think, I'll sit here and tell you that up until about a month and a half before official visits started, up until that point, I didn't think the Gamecocks would get him back in the fold. Now the Auburn thing that came up, although it's Auburn, it's an in-state school, you have to be aware of it. He has to drive through Auburn to get here. That was kind of, I don't know that I've necessarily thought ever in my mind he would end up at Auburn. Always saw this possibility, but wasn't concerned about that one. as much as Ole Miss and Florida State. Just quarterback's a little different when you're talking about fit and they only take one and depth chart and all that. And, Carolina's depth chart right now is favorable for somebody to come in. Aaron Nolan is young, Cutter Woods is young, but, there's no telling what will happen. You have a transfer portal now, and quarterbacks get in it through no fault of anybody's. It's not, and it's not necessarily always with those guys. It's not always money driven. They get paid quite a bit because they're worth it, but they want to play. You can only play one at a time. Most schools play one at a time, and if they play two, it's kind of in a specialty package like Priblia, who's at Missouri now, who was at Penn State last season. If a starter loses his job during the season, he's not sticking to be the backup. Spencer Rattler was an example of that. And schools can change their destiny by going with some of these guys. Look at Joe Burrow at LSU. That was before the portal. He was just a transfer. He lost the job to, who's the kid? He unfortunately passed away, but lost the job up there. Ohio kid, left, went to LSU, had some ups and downs his first year, and last year the last year's there is one of the best players best player in the country, and ended up winning the national championship and having a dominant run. The LSU Tigers transfer quarterback. So that's kind of what happens. And so you never know. I think South Carolina is smart to take the approach to get one every year and then just let them let it sort itself out, right? We'll see what happens, but we'll see. It's an announcement tonight. I know some folks are not confident based on kind of the trending with recruiting in general, and you can't rule anything out. But all the crystal balls are pointing towards Landon Duckworth, and there's been shockers before, so stay tuned. If you're not doing anything this Friday night, tune in for the Landon Duckworth announcement. And so we'll see what happens there. That would be a big pickup, I think. He's one of the top quarterbacks in the country, and folks that have evaluated him and seen him, he just gets better and better and better. Terrific athlete, too. For those that are of the opinion South Carolina always needs a dual threat quarterback, I don't go that far. I take it to no statues in the pocket, right? That would be my thing. Just because you get good. I mean, if you don't have a quarterback that can kind of get out of trouble, it limits you. You better be really, really good at blocking. I mentioned Joe Burrow earlier. Joe Burrow could take off and go. And I think that's applicable to the whole game, the entire game of football these days. If you watch Arch Manning this year, you will see he has wheels, unlike his uncles. The uncle style quarterback. I mean, if you're Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, and you're sitting there reading defenses and dicing people up, and you have enough protection, yeah. But in the SEC, it's very helpful to have folks that can escape. Duckworth's not just that; he's a talented runner too. Kind of like Lenora Sellers is. I'm not going to compare the two because Lenoris is so rare, and maybe Landon's rare as well. But this is a good one. This is a guy that can, develop and really help the program in the future. And that's taking nothing away from Cutter Woods, who I think is fantastic, and Aaron Nolan, who's got a lot of tools and skill sets, or a lot of tools within his skill set to be a good quarterback. So we'll see what happens with Landon Duckworth. It would be a good pickup. Another four-star prospect, top 50 to 60 prospect nationally, top 10 quarterback nationally from the state of Alabama, would be the first quarterback from Alabama since Chris Smelley. No, gosh, shut up, JC. You're wrong. Tanner Bailey was from Gordo, Alabama. Remember him? He's at Auburn now. He, I think, spent a year as a normal student, and I think he's back on the team. But highly regarded guy from Gordo, Alabama. Gordo is out from between Tuscaloosa and Starkville on that road you lose cell phone service from if you're heading to Stark, Vegas. Jackson, where Landon Duckworth's from, is kind of south kind of in. Oh, if you look on the map, it's between. I've never been there. If you look on the map, that's kind of between Mobile and Montgomery. It's different parts of Alabama there, but yeah. So this would be Tanner Bailey, the first since Tanner Bailey from the state of Alabama. So how about that? And if you include KJ Johnson and Keenan Britt, the linebacker, this would be three players in the class from Alabama for the Gamecocks. That's a good state to go recruiting in. It's population wise, Alabama's smaller than South Carolina, but they put out an abnormal number of FBS level prospects every year. A lot of that, the big numbers probably get inflated a little bit by UAB, Troy, and South Alabama, but it's good. It's a good state. I mean, there's a reason those teams, Auburn and Alabama, historically are really good. So yeah, it's a good place to go recruiting, and I like Johnson, like Britt, and love Duckworth, and so we'll see kind of how all that goes. But 7 o'clock tonight for that announcement. South Carolina did get a commitment yesterday, a welcome home. Kind of out of, I don't want to say out of left field. This is a player that they had in camp, and Torian Gray, a master spotter of talent. And we can say that now because not just because of what he's done at Carolina, but Virginia Tech. We've all heard the Torian Gray story. He's invaluable. Going into his fifth year, South Carolina secondary coach, can flat out build it. Undeniable track record for him. And he when he evaluates a player, says he wants them. I think most of us, all of us, give him the benefit of the doubt because you can make Cam Smith into an NFL player, you can make Darius Rush into an NFL player. It really does not matter with him. And so, excitingly enough, he found a guy on in state, Greenwood High School. Good to see a player coming out of Greenwood. The Gamecocks beat Gardner Webb on this kid. So, but he is a quarterback that's going to shift to the secondary. Triston Lewis. He got the offer yesterday and immediately committed. 6'3" and a half, so he fits the dimensions. 200 pounds. Multi-sport athlete, plays baseball. Like I said, he plays quarterback for Greenwood High School for the Eagles. There, came to camp, ran 4.63 40. That's not blazing for a defensive back, but his other athletic testing was off the charts. 24/7 Sports likes him a lot. They threw an 88 on him. That's a high 3-star. Perhaps they are learning about sleeper talent in South Carolina. Ranked as the number 39 athlete prospect nationally and a top 10 prospect in the state, number 9 in the state per 24/7 Sports composite, which is what counts in the team rankings. 0.8750. That's still on the high end of the 3-star range. 53rd athlete in the country and number 12 in South Carolina. So I like the way this kid moves around. His frame, obviously, when you talk about converted quarterbacks at South Carolina, DQ Smith comes to mind. There's a lot of confidence DQ is going to have a big year this year. He started for 4 years at Carolina. It's kind of his time to go out there and get it done. He's a converted quarterback in the secondary that did well. Stephon Gilmore was the quarterback for South Point. He played on defense too, went both ways. But we remember Gilmore getting into the games and playing a little quarterback during his time at Carolina. I wouldn't go so far as to call him a converted quarterback, but high school quarterback, right? Savell Newton obviously played some quarterback here, but also played about 3 other positions at a high level. So there's a guy you could kind of point to. I'm sure there's others. Was Robert Brooks? We had Robert Brooks, and he's also from Greenwood. Was he a quarterback in high school? I'm not sure. But there's lots of them, especially in the secondary that translate pretty well. I'll talk about Eric Berry, who used to be at Tennessee all the time, quarterback for his high school team. So that's there's a, I guess a track record there, not only at Carolina, but throughout college football of converted quarterbacks doing well, especially in the secondary. So we'll see kind of how all that shakes out over time with Triston Lewis. He'll come in with the 2026 class, and we'll see. He'll start the development process, and we'll see how everything goes. So he's big and tall and rangy like Tamarian Watkins or Nick Eamon-Warre or Kendall Daniels, but converted quarterback like a DQ Smith. So Hale McGranahan described him maybe as a hybrid between Nick and DQ from that standpoint. Certainly not, certainly a long way to go before you know, you hang those kind of accolades on the young man. But I love pickups like this. I really, really do. I think that in our state, there are a lot of good football players. And you look out back through time, and there are a lot of good football players that South Carolina and Clemson both maybe don't think are good enough initially. And they end up being really, really good. The most recent example of that at Carolina is probably Josh Simon, who went to Western Kentucky, developed, had a good go of it, comes to Carolina, and now boom, didn't get drafted, but I don't know how many tight ends the Falcons have, so he may end up making that roster for sure. Led the Gamecocks in receiving during one of their better years in program history, and was an all-around competitor from right at little old Dalzell, South Carolina. There's another one. If you read some of the headlines and listen to some of the feedback, Brandon Cisse, who came in from the transfer portal from NC State, he's a corner. They're raving about him, and it's almost to the point where it's one of those universal things where the expectations in my mind that were already high because I thought he was like too good not to take. It didn't matter who else they had gotten at corner from the portal. It may be even higher than that. I mean, and he no Clemson offer, no South Carolina offer. Went to NC State, and obviously the magic of the portal, you get players like that back. But there's other guys. I mean, Nate Johnson, who was at App State for 2 years, no offer yet again from the in-state programs, and now he's going to be at Missouri, and they think he's going to play on a very talented D line and probably be a starter by next year out there. So the hit rate on taking a flyer on an in-state player, especially ones that aren't, clear as far as position and all that, that they tend to work out. Now, there's no guarantees. Triston Lewis may come to South Carolina and oh, surprise, he's just not good enough, or, you got to work hard and have a great attitude and all that to succeed in the sport of football. But it's the ingredients are there, is what I'm saying. So that's a good pickup, and I'm surprised that he was rated by 24/7 Sports as high as he was, because it's a hard thing to project, But I guess they have some faith in Torian Gray as well. But hey, look, give me all the guys from Greenwood that want to be Gamecocks as possible. I'm going to read you off 4 names that were former Greenwood Eagles that and shout out to everybody in Greenwood that's listening. Last time I was in Greenwood, my goodness, I didn't speak. I went to cover the Gamecock Club meeting. It was during the Muschamp era. Muschamp and Frank Martin were there, and I remember getting a little interview with for the Big Spur. The guys couldn't go or something, so I was in Greenville and drove down. Really a fan of Lake Greenwood. One of my good friends went to Lander, loved living in Greenwood. So shout out to Greenwood and the community. It's kind of a little hidden gem, in my opinion, in South Carolina. But anyway, football there has been pretty solid through the years. Ernest Dye, obviously, was who played for years in the NFL, was a Gamecock and went to Greenwood. Marty Dye was I think his brother also played there. More in the 80s as well. Robert Brooks was from Greenwood. The creator of the Lambeau Leap and one of the best of all time to play at South Carolina. There's a Robert Brooks interview on our YouTube channel, by the way, if you want to check it out. He was part of Oh, what was this come out? So welcome, was it welcome? We call it Welcome Home series. What do we call it? Anyway, it was back when Bradford and all of us were doing the show. Really fascinating interview. He lives in Phoenix and is doing well, has kids, living his best life. He made some very wise investments. So shout out to Greenwood's Robert Brooks. I'll never ever forget the one-handed catch as a true freshman he made against Georgia. It was 1988. Todd Ellis was the quarterback, and Carolina was had pretty high expectations that year. They were undefeated, and they beat the Dogs pretty good. And early on, Ellis, it was right in that same corner of the end zone that Garcia hit Alshon on the touchdown against Alabama. I think the second touchdown in the first half against Alabama, for those that are younger that maybe weren't around in 88 but were in 2010. So right there, there's been a lot of magical moments happen in that end zone. So Robert Brooks, more recently, DJ Swearinger, who can forget that guy? Just a great, great Gamecock. Love DJ. Obviously, everybody does. DJ Swag, Greenwood guy. Hey, I think he played quarterback for his high school team. I mean, he wasn't he wasn't like Triston Lewis or maybe a DQ Smith that there was some question as to, well, is he going to be a college quarterback or not? He was always going to be a DB, but he may have. I got to check on that. Maybe not though. And then of course Kelsey Quarles, Buddy Quarles, his dad played at Carolina. Kelsey played at Carolina, had a bunch of sacks in 2013 for the Gamecocks. Got a cup of coffee in the NFL. So those are the Gamecocks from Greenwood. Carolina historically gets guys from Greenwood, by the way. And then, outside of that, I spoke of players that slipped through the cracks. Armani Edwards, who went to App State, was an outstanding quarterback there, and I believe played some receiver in the NFL, is a Greenwood guy. And then Josh Norman, who's a fantastic corner. I think he ended up Coastal. And then also big time NFL guy. So, camp evaluations are good. They also kind of pan out. Nick Emanware is the latest example of that. TJ Sanders was a camp evaluation. O'Donnell Fortune under the previous staff was a and Darius Rush both were camp evaluations. I mean, through the years, camp's been pretty good for the Gamecocks. Not always. There's been some busts from camp evals, but it's been pretty good. They've been pretty good for the Gamecocks through the years, and that's what Triston Lewis is. So, sort of one of those pickups. Yours truly makes his heart warm. In-state kids. Some people ask if this is a replacement for Tamarian Watkins, and who went to A&M. Obviously, I'm just gonna say I'm gonna throw a maybe out there. Maybe. Watkins wanted to flip. I don't know that they would just say, "No, sorry, we've got Triston Lewis now." But I do think that with the way this staff recruits, it's usually when they miss on a guy, they don't have like a plan, not a plan, but their plan B is, either most of the time like an in-state kid or a guy from out of state they absolutely love, or it's portal. And I think a lot of schools do that, folks. I think that the high school recruiting board shrinks a bit because you do have access to the portal and you can get a better player. And you not only can replace what you lost in this class, but if you get an older player, you can replace some misses in previous classes. That's the overwhelmingly positive part of the portal, I think. As much as the transition probably drives people crazy in college football these days, it's handy for coaches, and especially at a place where you're not recruiting 100% no-brainers all the time. And even the schools that do recruit 100% no-brainers all the time, they have different sets of problems with the portal, because those guys are all entitled and feel like they should be playing, when in reality, there's probably a third of them that are good enough to play. I'm not talking about even start or shot or star. That's why I think the money's so ridiculous. It's like, what? you're just going to do that to get them in the door, and they're not going to play. I mean, how are you going to it's called de-recruiting, when reality hits, as it all does as it does for all of us in college, at least, no later than like Christmas time, our first semester, when, assuming you enrolled in the fall, I enrolled in the spring. So May, when your grades come out, reality hits you in the face. And in football, it happens when camp starts, or probably now with winter and summer workouts. Those are no joke. So reality hits you in the face. And that's I think with somebody has $800,000 to $1 million in the bank, it may be harder for them to accept said reality. And I'm not questioning the character of anybody, any player out there, because if they're special, they will overcome that. And even without money, your self starters are your special players. It's talent maximization, and the guys that maximize are the guys that are self starters, no matter the ranking or floor or whatever. It's those guys with the high ranking and high floor, high ceiling that also maximize that end up being your top players and high draft picks and all that. In most cases, the D lineman at Texas for Texas A&M that's holding out with the Bengals and his 3 sacks, I don't know. So I guess there is a path forward for some, based on potential to the NFL, but it doesn't happen often. But like football, all these things there's exceptions to everything in the sport, which also, you know, tells you that it is an allegory of life, folks. Um, so, I kind of got off track there with talking about money, but that all that came before there was money involved. So, you know, we'll see sort of how everything goes. But always a good day when you get an in-state prospect, I believe, at South Carolina. And again with Watkins, I have no idea. If this is a replacement or not. So we'll see kind of how it all shakes out at the end of the day. I hear different things about him, as far as will he flip. I mentioned earlier this week. Well, everybody's writing that he's going to definitely flip. I don't know. People around Rock Hill almost laughed at committing to Texas A&M because they were like, "Oh, that's not going to hold." There's a reason people say that. It means they've been told or feel a certain way, but you just never know. You never know. I mean, it does seem like more than a coincidence that Watkins, commits to A&M and they immediately go with a guy that's going to play in the secondary that's 6'3" and a half, 200 pounds or whatever. But maybe Watkins does grow into a linebacker. South Carolina didn't think that. South Carolina thought he was a DB. But South Carolina, Torian Gray, who I mentioned earlier, obviously likes bigger DBs, taller DBs. And I learned my lesson with Keanu Neal, who played for Florida and the Falcons. Neal was part of one of Muschamp's classes down there, and he's about 215 coming out of high school. And I was like, he's going to grow into a linebacker because he's so physical. Never did. There's another guy like that out of Orlando that Urban Meyer recruited to Florida. Never grew into a linebacker. And then I didn't do this. My ex-boss did it. They thought Brandon Spikes, who played at Florida out of Shelby, North Carolina, was a D end. Never happened. One of the best middle linebackers out there. On the flip side of that, I stood my ground with Melvin Ingram because I thought he was a linebacker. Part of that was at South Carolina outside of Jasper Brinkley. Linebacker was kind of one of those things, you kind of pieced it together. And I was like, well, here's a stud linebacker and all that. And I disagreed with my friend who is really good at evaluating talent. Just told me at the Shrine Bowl, Melvin was a D end, and he was. So there you go. Today is Wrong Friday, right? Here, tell everybody how wrong JC was. So good class brewing. Brewing. It's up to 12 commitments now. If Duckworth commits, it'd be 13. We'll see Who else joins the class? Kosi Barnes, another tall, rangy defensive back that they like at corner from Greensboro. He's up to bat at the end of the month. You still have Darius Gray, the five-star offensive guard out there. We've talked about him. I've told you that I feel pretty good about that. And then we'll see if they can flip anybody and see who else pops up on the radar. All right, that's going to do it for me today. JC Shurburtt right here on Coffee. Just wanted to quickly update on recruiting. Be sure to check out on our YouTube channel. We have the smorgasbord segment with Alex kind of broken off. It's the title of the video is about Kyle Kennard. Really interesting things to say about replacing Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart. We went in depth on some of the depth on defense. We talked about Kamari Blair. It's one of the best smorgasbord conversations that we've had, and you don't have to sit through any commercials or anything because it's broken out right there on our YouTube channel. Please like, subscribe, share, do all that good stuff. I looked at the numbers the other day, and a lot of our viewers here, I still think only 40% of them hit the subscribe button. So help us out, hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. Just help us for that. And if you do it, you get little notifications when we go live right here on YouTube, Chief Sports South Carolina. If you're on the podcast version, please go rate us 5 stars on Apple and continue those downloads and all that good stuff. There's been a lot of them. I hope all of you have a happy weekend. And we'll see you on the show later. JC Shurburtt signing off. Holla at you soon.